Hello there, and welcome to this quiet corner where big questions get the time they deserve. Tonight, we're not rushing toward any quick answers or easy conclusions. Instead, we're settling in with something that sits right at the edge of everything we think we know about reality itself. Something that sounds simple but opens up into depths that have puzzled physicists, philosophers, and anyone who's ever wondered about the nature of existence. Does the past still exist somewhere in time? Now I know what you're thinking. Of course the past doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. It happened, we lived through it, and now it's just memory. The future hasn't arrived yet, and all we have is this fleeting moment we call the present. This razor-thin slice of now that keeps moving forward, carrying us along with it. That seems obvious, doesn't it? That seems like the most natural thing in the world. But here's where it gets interesting. According to our best understanding of physics, according to Einstein's theories that have been tested and confirmed countless times, that obvious, natural feeling we have about time might be completely wrong. Not just a little off, but fundamentally, deeply mistaken. The past you think is gone, the future you think hasn't happened yet. They might all be sitting there, equally real, equally present, just displaced from where you are right now. Before we dive into that strange possibility, I'd love to know where you are as you're listening to this. What time is it where you are? Are you winding down for the night? Or maybe starting your day with something that makes you think? It's funny, isn't it? Here we are, scattered across different moments, different places, but somehow sharing this same question about whether time itself is what we think it is. If you find yourself drawn to these kinds of slow-burning mysteries, the questions that don't have neat answers but change how you see everything, I'd be grateful if you hit like or subscribe. It helps this little signal find other curious minds, and honestly, these are the kinds of conversations that matter more when they're shared. So settle in, maybe dim the lights if you can, and let's take a careful walk through one of the strangest territories in all of science and philosophy. Because what we're about to explore isn't just an abstract puzzle, it's about the fundamental nature of reality, about whether your childhood, your first kiss, your grandmother's laugh, whether all of that is gone forever or whether it's still out there somewhere, as real as this moment you're experiencing right now. The story starts, as many strange stories do, with Albert Einstein. Not the wild-haired icon of genius we see in photographs, but the young patent clerk who was quietly revolutionizing our understanding of space and time. In 1905, he published what we now call the special theory of relativity, and tucked inside those equations was something that would shatter our common-sense notion of time forever. Einstein showed us that time isn't what we thought it was. It's not a universal river flowing at the same rate for everyone. Instead, time is relative. It depends on how fast you're moving, how deep you are in a gravitational field, where you are, and what you're doing. Two people can experience the same events and disagree about when they happened, and both of them can be absolutely correct. This isn't just theoretical speculation. We can measure it. GPS satellites orbiting Earth have to constantly correct their clocks because time moves slightly faster up there, away from Earth's gravity, than it does down here where we live. Without those corrections, your navigation would be off by miles. The technology in your pocket proves that time is flexible, malleable, relative. But here's where it gets really strange. If time is relative, if there's no universal clock ticking away the same moments for everyone, then what does that mean for the past and future? Einstein's equations suggest something called the relativity of simultaneity. Events that are simultaneous for one observer happening at exactly the same time can be in the past for another observer, and in the future for a third. The now that feels so absolute to you is completely arbitrary from the perspective of the universe. Picture this. You're sitting in a chair, reading this, and somewhere across the galaxy, an alien is also sitting in a chair. If that alien is moving toward Earth, then according to Einstein's equations, their now includes events that are in your future. If they're moving away from Earth, their now includes events that are in your past. The same cosmic moment contains your present, your past, and your future, all equally real, all equally valid. This leads to what physicists call the block universe theory, or eternalism. Imagine time not as a flowing river, but as a landscape. The past isn't behind you in time, it's behind you in space. The future isn't ahead of you in time, it's ahead of you in space. All of time, from the beginning of the universe to its end, exists as a single, four-dimensional block. Your entire life, from birth to death, is laid out like a road on a map. In this view, the moment you were born still exists. The moment you'll die already exists. Every conversation you've ever had, every sunset you've watched, every mistake you've made, and every joy you've felt, they're all still there, frozen in the amber of space-time. You don't move through time so much as your consciousness slides along your world line, experiencing each moment in sequence, creating the illusion of movement, the illusion of flow. It's a breathtaking idea and a terrifying one. It suggests that nothing is ever really lost, but also that nothing is ever really changing. The block universe is static, eternal, complete. The flow of time, the sense that the future is open and the past is fixed. These become features not of reality itself, but of consciousness, of the way minds like ours happen to experience a fundamentally timeless reality. Now, this isn't just philosophical speculation. The mathematics of relativity, the same mathematics that predicted the existence of black holes and gravitational waves and GPS corrections, points inexorably toward this block universe view. When physicists work with Einstein's equations, they don't treat time as something that flows. They treat it as a coordinate, like the coordinates on a map. Time becomes a dimension, as real and as static as the dimensions of space. Hermann Minkowski, one of Einstein's former teachers, put it beautifully in 1908. He said, "Henceforth space by itself and time by itself are doomed to fade away into mere shadows, and only a kind of union of the two will preserve an independent reality." Space and time aren't separate things. They're aspects of a single entity, space-time. And in space-time, the past and future are as real as different locations in space. But here's where our intuitions rebel. Everything in our experience tells us that the past is gone. We remember it, but we can't touch it, can't change it, can't go back to it. The future feels open, undetermined, full of possibilities. We make decisions that seem to shape what happens next. How can all of that be an illusion? This is where the story gets more complicated and more interesting, because not everyone agrees with the block universe view. There are physicists and philosophers who argue passionately that time is real, that the flow we experience corresponds to something fundamental in the structure of reality. Some propose what's called the growing block universe. In this view, the past exists, solid and unchanging, but the future doesn't exist yet. The present is the growing edge of reality, the place where new moments crystallize into existence. The universe is like a tree, with the past as the trunk and the present as the growing tip, adding new rings of reality moment by moment. Others defend presentism, the idea that only the present moment is real. The past has ceased to exist. The future has yet to come into being, and reality consists of nothing more than this knife-edge present moving forward through time. It's the view that aligns most closely with our everyday experience, but it faces serious challenges from relativity theory. Then there are those who argue that time itself might be an illusion, an emergent property of more fundamental processes. In quantum gravity, the equations that attempt to describe the universe at its most basic level often don't include time at all. Time becomes something that emerges when consciousness carves local clocks out of a timeless quantum foam. The debate isn't just academic. It touches on some of the deepest questions we can ask. If the past still exists, what does that mean for memory, for grief, for the sense of loss that defines so much of human experience? If the future already exists, what happens to free will, to the feeling that our choices matter, that we're authoring our own stories? These questions become even stranger when we venture into quantum mechanics, where particles seem to exist in multiple states simultaneously until they're observed, where the act of measurement appears to collapse infinite possibilities into a single reality. Some quantum experiments seem to suggest that decisions made in the present can influence events that happened in the past, that the boundary between cause and effect becomes blurred in ways that challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of time. Wheeler's delayed choice experiments, for instance, seem to show that a photon's behavior billions of years ago can be determined by a choice we make today about how to observe it. The implications are staggering. If the future can influence the past, then the neat division between what has happened and what will happen starts to break down entirely. But maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe instead of asking whether the past still exists, we should be asking what existence even means. In a universe where space and time are relative, where quantum particles exist in superposition, where consciousness itself might be an emergent property of complex information processing, the Cathedral of Notre Dame offers a beautiful metaphor. From our perspective, it's a building that exists in the present, shaped by its history but separate from its past. But from the perspective of space-time, Notre Dame is a four-dimensional object, a world line that extends from its first stone laid in 1163 to whatever future awaits it. Every moment of its construction, every person who walked through its doors, every prayer whispered in its shadows, all of that is woven into its four-dimensional structure, equally real, equally present. We are like that cathedral, extended through time rather than just existing in it. Your past selves, the child you were, the teenager struggling with identity, the young adult making crucial decisions, they might not be gone at all. They might be as real as you are right now, just located elsewhere in the landscape of space-time. This perspective doesn't answer all our questions, but it reframes them in fascinating ways. Instead of asking whether the past exists, we might ask how consciousness navigates through the four-dimensional structure of space-time, creating the experience of flow, the sense of becoming, the feeling that we're moving from past to future, rather than simply existing across all of time simultaneously. The mystery deepens when we consider that our brains evolved to process information sequentially, to maintain coherent models of cause and effect, to plan for the future based on memories of the past. We are temporal creatures trying to understand a potentially timeless reality, using minds that may be fundamentally limited in their ability to grasp the true nature of time. But that limitation might also be a gift, because maybe our experience of temporal flow, this sense we have of moving from moment to moment, isn't a bug in our perceptual system, but a feature. Maybe consciousness itself is the process by which the static structure of space-time becomes dynamic, lived, meaningful. Think about it this way. A novel exists as a complete object. All the words are there on the pages. The beginning and end coexist in the same physical space. But reading it creates something entirely different, a temporal experience where characters develop, plots unfold, surprises emerge. The story doesn't change, but the experience of it does. Perhaps we are reading our way through the novel of our own existence, and what we call the flow of time is simply the act of reading. This brings us to one of the most profound aspects of this question. If the past still exists somewhere in time, then every moment of suffering also still exists. Every loss, every heartbreak, every moment of pain that you've moved beyond, they're all still happening somewhere in the four-dimensional structure of reality. But so is every moment of joy, every instant of love, every second of wonder and discovery. The first time you saw the ocean, the moment you realized you were in love, the quiet satisfaction of solving a difficult problem. All of that is as eternal and unchanging as the laws of physics themselves. It's a double-edged revelation. On one hand, it suggests a kind of cosmic permanence to experience, a sense that nothing beautiful is ever truly lost. On the other hand, it implies that nothing terrible ever truly ends either. The block universe is democratic in its eternalism. It preserves everything equally, without judgment, without preference for joy over sorrow. But here's where the story takes another turn, because some physicists are pushing back against this austere view of time. Lee Smolin, a theoretical physicist at the Perimeter Institute, has spent years arguing that time is not an illusion, but the most fundamental aspect of reality. In his view, the laws of physics themselves evolve over time. The universe isn't a completed block, but an ongoing process of becoming, where genuinely new things emerge that couldn't have been predicted from what came before. Smolin proposes something he calls the thick present, a region of space-time where events can influence each other, where the future is genuinely open and undetermined. In this picture, the past exists as a record of what has happened, but the future exists only as a space of possibilities, constantly being narrowed down by the choices and chances of the present moment. This perspective attempts to reconcile our experience of temporal flow with the mathematical structure of relativity. It suggests that what we feel when we experience the passage of time isn't an illusion imposed by consciousness, but a real feature of how the universe operates at its deepest level. Time doesn't just seem to pass, it actually does pass, and that passage is what allows for creativity, novelty, and genuine choice in the world. The debate between these views isn't just technical, it cuts to the heart of what it means to be human in a physical universe. If the block universe is correct, then in some sense, your entire life story is already written, existing complete and unchanging in the structure of space-time. Your decisions, your struggles, your growth and change, all of it is already there, laid out like scenes in a movie that plays the same way every time. But if time is fundamental, if the present is genuinely thick and creative, then your choices matter in a more robust sense. The future is still being written, and you are one of its authors. The decisions you make, the love you give, the problems you solve, they genuinely add something new to the universe that wasn't there before. Quantum mechanics adds yet another layer to this mystery. At the quantum level, particles seem to exist in multiple states simultaneously until they're measured. This superposition is not just a limitation of our knowledge, it appears to be a fundamental feature of reality. Particles are genuinely in multiple places at once, spinning in multiple directions simultaneously, until the act of observation collapses all those possibilities into a single, definite outcome. This raises fascinating questions about the nature of the past. If quantum events are genuinely random, if they represent moments where the universe makes real choices between multiple possibilities, then perhaps the past isn't as fixed as it seems. Maybe what we remember as a definite sequence of events is actually the result of countless quantum coin flips, and other versions of the past, other possible histories, exist in parallel realities that we can't access but that are no less real for being hidden from us. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments push this even further. These experiments seem to show that information about a quantum event can be erased even after the event has occurred, changing what we can retroactively know about its nature. It's as if the past itself has a kind of quantum uncertainty, a fuzziness that extends backward through time. Now, this doesn't mean that quantum mechanics allows us to change the past in any practical sense. You can't use quantum effects to go back and prevent your parents from meeting or to give yourself winning lottery numbers. But it does suggest that the past might not be the solid, unchanging foundation we imagine it to be. Instead, it might be more like a developing photograph, where certain details remain uncertain until the right kind of observation brings them into focus. This quantum perspective on time introduces a profound asymmetry between past and future. The future exists as a superposition of possibilities, a quantum foam of potential events waiting to be actualized by measurement and observation. The past, by contrast, consists of events that have already been measured, possibilities that have already collapsed into definite outcomes. But the boundary between these regions, the present moment where collapse occurs, becomes a much more active and creative place than either the block universe or classical physics would suggest. We can see this asymmetry in our own experience, memory and anticipation feel completely different. When you remember something, you're accessing information about events that have a definite character, even if your memory of them is imperfect. When you anticipate something, you're navigating among possibilities, imagining different ways things might unfold. The difference isn't just psychological, it might reflect a real difference in the structure of time itself. This brings us to thermodynamics and the arrow of time. Even in a block universe, there's something that distinguishes past from future: the direction in which entropy increases. Entropy is a measure of disorder, and the second law of thermodynamics tells us that entropy always increases over time. This is why we see coffee and cream mixing together, but never spontaneously unmixing, why broken eggs don't reassemble themselves, why heat flows from hot objects to cold ones, but not the other way around. The thermodynamic arrow of time gives us a way of distinguishing past from future, even in a static block universe. The past is the direction of lower entropy. The future is the direction of higher entropy. This arrow emerges from the statistical behavior of large numbers of particles, but it creates a real asymmetry in the structure of space-time. But here's what's remarkable. Consciousness seems to be aligned with this thermodynamic arrow. We remember the low entropy past and anticipate the high entropy future. Our brains, which are highly ordered structures that consume energy to maintain their organization, are themselves part of the universe's ongoing increase in entropy. Every thought you think, every memory you form, every decision you make contributes to the cosmic process by which order becomes disorder, by which the universe explores the space of possible configurations. This suggests a deep connection between consciousness and time that goes beyond mere perception. We're not just observers of the temporal structure of reality, we're participants in it. Our mental processes are woven into the same thermodynamic tapestry that gives time its direction. We are time in a sense, at least the part of time that involves the transformation of information, the creation of memory, the navigation of possibility. This perspective opens up new ways of thinking about personal identity and continuity across time. If you exist as a four-dimensional structure extending through space-time, then the you of 10 years ago is as real as the you of right now. But the relationship between these temporal selves isn't just one of identity, it's one of information flow, of memory and anticipation, of the gradual accumulation of experience, and the gradual degradation of order. Your past selves created the memories that your present self carries. Your present self is creating the memories that your future self will inherit. This isn't just metaphorical, it's a physical process involving the reorganization of neural networks, the encoding of information in biological structures, the transformation of experience into memory and memory into identity. But if the past still exists somewhere in time, what happens to change and growth? How can we make sense of learning, healing, becoming better versions of ourselves if our past mistakes and limitations are just as real and present as our current wisdom and strength? Maybe the answer lies in recognizing that change doesn't require the past to disappear. Change might be better understood as the relationship between different temporal parts of ourselves, the way information and influence flow along our world line through space-time. You're not the same person you were 10 years ago, but you're connected to that person by an unbroken chain of physical and mental processes. The growth you've experienced isn't negated by the continued existence of your past self. It's expressed in the complexity and richness of your four-dimensional structure. Think of it like a river. The water that passed a particular point an hour ago is still part of the river system, even though it's now miles downstream. The river changes constantly, but it maintains its identity through the continuous flow of water, the persistence of its banks, the ongoing relationship between all its parts. You might be similar, a pattern of matter and energy and information that maintains its identity while constantly changing, extended through time rather than just existing in it. This view suggests that the question of whether the past still exists might be less important than understanding how all the moments of our existence relate to each other, how they form a coherent whole, how they create the ongoing story of who we are and who we're becoming. And that story, whether it's written in the static structure of a block universe or unfolding in real time through a genuinely creative cosmos, remains one of the most remarkable things we know about. The fact that matter can organize itself in such a way that it becomes capable of asking questions about its own existence, of wondering about the nature of time, of feeling love and loss and hope and curiosity that remains profound, regardless of whether these experiences are eternal features of space-time or fleeting moments in an ever-changing present. Perhaps that's the real mystery, not whether the past still exists, but how existence itself becomes experience, how the physical becomes the personal, how the universe becomes aware of itself through creatures like us who find themselves capable of wonder. This question touches something deeper than physics or philosophy. It reaches into the very nature of what we call existence, what we mean when we say something is real. And here's where the story takes a turn that might surprise you, because some of the most recent thinking about time suggests that our entire framework for asking this question might be backwards. What if time isn't something that contains events, but something that emerges from them? What if the flow we experience, the sense of moving from past to future, isn't a journey through a pre-existing landscape, but the actual process by which reality constructs itself, moment by moment, choice by choice, observation by observation? This isn't just abstract speculation. There are experiments we can do, measurements we can make, that probe the very foundations of temporal reality. And what they're showing us is stranger than either the block universe or our common sense view of flowing time would suggest. Consider what happens when we try to observe the universe at its smallest scales, in those quantum realms where particles dance between existence and possibility. Here, the act of observation doesn't just reveal what was already there. It participates in bringing something definite into being from a cloud of potential states. The future doesn't just become the present, it crystallizes from pure possibility into actuality through the mysterious process we call measurement. But here's the truly mind-bending part. Some of these quantum effects seem to work backwards through time, not in the sense of sending information into the past, but in the sense that what we choose to observe now can influence the definite character of events that have already occurred. It's as if the past itself has a kind of flexibility, a responsiveness to present choices that shouldn't be possible if time was simply a static dimension like space. The delayed choice experiments demonstrate this in ways that still make physicists uncomfortable. A photon emitted from a distant quasar billions of years ago encounters a gravitational lens that splits its path. It can travel around either side of the lens or, in quantum superposition, both sides simultaneously. But here's the strange part. The choice of whether to observe which path it took can be made after the photon has already arrived at Earth. That choice, made today, seems to retroactively determine whether the photon took one path or both paths billions of years ago. This doesn't violate causality in any practical sense. You can't use these effects to send messages to the past or change historical events. But it does suggest that the boundary between past and future, between what has happened and what might happen, is more fluid and interactive than our everyday experience would suggest. Maybe the past exists, but not in the way we imagine. Maybe it exists as a kind of crystallized possibility space, definite in some respects, but retaining a subtle responsiveness to present observation and choice. Maybe the future exists too, but as a constantly shifting landscape of potential, narrowing and focusing as it approaches the present moment, where possibility collapses into actuality. This view suggests something revolutionary about the nature of existence itself. Instead of thinking about reality as a collection of objects moving through time, we might think of it as a process of becoming, a continuous transformation of the possible into the actual. The past would still exist, but as the record of this process, the accumulated history of choices made and possibilities actualized, the future would exist as the open space of what might yet become real. Your childhood memories in this view aren't just traces of events that once happened and are now gone. They're part of the ongoing process by which the universe knows itself, part of the mechanism by which possibility becomes memory, by which potential becomes personal history. The pain you've moved beyond, the joy you've experienced, the love you've given and received, all of it contributes to the vast, ongoing computation by which reality constructs itself from moment to moment. This perspective makes consciousness not just an observer of time, but a participant in its creation. Every decision you make, every attention you pay, every memory you form, contributes to the process by which the fuzzy quantum possibilities of the future crystallize into the definite classical realities of the past. You're not just living through time, you're helping to create it. But this raises new puzzles. If consciousness plays a role in crystallizing reality from possibility, what happens to all the events that occur without conscious observation? Does a tree falling in an empty forest make a sound? More precisely, does it make a definite sound, or does it remain in superposition until someone or something capable of observation encounters the evidence of its fall? The answer might be that observation doesn't require human consciousness. Any sufficiently complex system that can record information, that can be irreversibly changed by an interaction, might serve as an observer. The environment itself, the air molecules that carry sound waves, the ground that vibrates with the impact, the other trees that sway in response, all of these might serve as a vast network of natural observers, constantly collapsing possibility into actuality through the simple process of interaction. This gives us a picture of the universe as a vast information processing system, where every interaction, every collision, every quantum measurement contributes to the ongoing transformation of the possible into the real. Time becomes not a container within which things happen, but the process by which things happen. The mechanism by which reality computes itself into existence. In this view, asking whether the past still exists becomes like asking whether yesterday's computation is still running on a computer. The computation finish has, its results have been recorded, its outputs have become the inputs for today's computation. The process that created yesterday is complete, but its products, its information, its influence on the present, all of that continues to exist and operate. Your past self isn't still experiencing your childhood, but the information patterns, the neural pathways, the learner responses, the emotional associations that were created during that childhood, all of that continues to exist and influence your present experience. The past exists as structure, as information, as the accumulated wisdom and damage and growth that shapes who you are now. This suggests a different kind of immortality than the block universe offers. Instead of your experiences existing forever as static moments in space-time, they exist as ongoing influences, as information patterns that continue to propagate forward through time, shaping the future in ways both subtle and profound. Every kindness you show, every problem you solve, every moment of beauty you create or appreciate becomes part of the universe's growing store of information about how to be, how to become, how to choose well among the infinite possibilities that the future offers. But let's step back for a moment and consider what all of this means for how we actually live. Because whether time is a static block, or a flowing river, or an emerging computation, we still wake up each morning with choices to make, relationships to nurture, problems to solve, moments to savor. The mystery of time's nature doesn't change the fact that we experience life as a sequence of nows, each one pregnant with possibility, each one shaped by the weight of everything that has come before. Maybe that's the real gift of this question. Not the answer, which remains beautifully uncertain, but the asking itself. The fact that we can wonder about the nature of time, that we can conceive of block universes and flowing presents and emerging realities, that we can hold these possibilities in our minds simultaneously and feel the vertigo of not knowing which one is true. That's something remarkable in itself. We are the universe becoming conscious of itself, questioning its own nature, marveling at its own complexity. Whether our past experiences are eternal fixtures in a four-dimensional block, or fading echoes in an ever-changing flow, or crystallized information in a vast cosmic computation, they have led to this moment of wonder, this capacity to ask questions that stretch our understanding to its limits. And maybe that capacity, that ability to wonder and question and imagine, is more fundamental than any particular answer we might find. Maybe consciousness itself, the thing that experiences time and questions its nature, is the most remarkable feature of reality, regardless of whether that reality is static or dynamic, eternal or emerging. The conversation continues, as it has for over a century, since Einstein first showed us that time is not what it seems. Physicists propose new experiments, philosophers refine their arguments, and each of us, in our own small way, continues to explore the mystery of existence through the simple act of living, of experiencing, of moving through whatever time turns out to be. We carry our past with us, not as luggage, but as part of who we are. We move toward a future that may already exist or may be genuinely open, but which we help create through every choice we make. And we inhabit a present that may be a moving boundary between existence and non-existence, or a growing edge of reality, or a moment of crystallization where possibility becomes fact. The beauty is that the mystery remains mysterious. After all our theories and experiments and philosophical arguments, time keeps its secrets. We can measure it, manipulate it, travel through it at different rates, but we can't step outside it to see what it really is. We are embedded in time, whether it flows or stands still, and that embedding is part of what makes us who we are. Perhaps the past exists not as a place we could visit, but as a dimension of the present, woven into every moment we experience. Perhaps the future exists not as a destination we're heading toward, but as a space of possibility that surrounds us always, pressing in on the present moment, waiting to unfold. And perhaps we, with our memories and hopes, our ability to learn from what has been and imagine what might be, perhaps we are time's way of experiencing itself, of knowing what it's like to be temporal creatures, in whatever kind of universe this turns out to be. In the end, we might be asking the wrong question entirely. Instead of wondering whether the past still exists somewhere in time, maybe we should be asking what it means for anything to exist at all. Because the deeper we dig into the nature of time, the more we realize that existence itself is far stranger and more layered than we ever imagined. Think about this moment right now. You're here, listening to these words, your brain processing information, your heart beating, your thoughts flowing from one idea to the next. What makes this moment real? What distinguishes it from a dream, from a memory, from a simulation running on some cosmic computer? The question isn't as simple as it sounds, because reality itself might not be as simple as it sounds. Some physicists have begun to suspect that what we call reality might be something like a hologram, a three-dimensional projection emerging from information encoded on a two-dimensional surface. Others wonder if we might be living in a vast simulation, our entire universe nothing more than patterns of information being processed by some unimaginably advanced computational system. These aren't fringe ideas anymore. They're serious scientific hypotheses being explored by some of the brightest minds in physics. If reality is holographic, then the past might exist as information encoded in the structure of the present. Every moment would contain, in some compressed form, the complete history of everything that led up to it. The past wouldn't be gone, it would be folded into the fabric of now, accessible in principle, but hidden from our ordinary perception. If we're living in a simulation, then the past might exist as saved data, archived states of the cosmic program that could, in theory, be loaded and experienced again. Your childhood wouldn't be gone, it would be stored somewhere in the vast memory banks of whatever system is running our reality. The future might exist as potential code, programs waiting to be executed, outcomes calculated but not yet displayed. These possibilities sound like science fiction, but they emerge from serious attempts to reconcile quantum mechanics with gravity, to understand how information behaves at the most fundamental levels of reality. They suggest that the boundary between the physical and the informational might not be as clear as we think. Maybe matter and energy are just different forms of information. Maybe time itself is just the universe's way of processing data. But here's what's beautiful about this uncertainty. It doesn't diminish the reality of your experience. Whether you're made of atoms or information, whether your memories are stored in neural networks or cosmic hard drives, whether time flows or stands still, you still feel love. You still experience wonder. You still have the capacity to be moved by beauty, to be changed by kindness, to grow through suffering, to find meaning in connection. The mystery of time's nature doesn't solve the mystery of consciousness, but it deepens it. How does awareness arise from whatever substrate we're built on? How does subjective experience emerge from objective processes? How does it feel like something to be a pattern of information processing? Whether that processing happens in biological brains or quantum computers or holographic projections. Maybe consciousness is time's way of experiencing itself from the inside. Maybe the flow of time that we feel so intimately is what temporal existence actually feels like when you're embedded within it, when you are it rather than observing it from the outside. We can't step outside time to see its true nature, but we can feel what it's like to be temporal beings, to carry the past within us and lean into an uncertain future. This brings us to something profound about human nature. We are creatures of time in the deepest possible sense. Our biology runs on circadian rhythms. Our psychology is shaped by memory and anticipation. Our entire sense of meaning depends on the feeling that our actions today can influence what happens tomorrow. We don't just exist in time, we embody it, we enact it, we are it. Even if the block universe is correct, even if all moments exist equally and eternally, there's something special about conscious moments, moments like the one you're experiencing right now. These are the moments where the universe becomes aware of itself, where matter organized in just the right way develops the capacity for wonder, for questioning, for the kind of reflection that makes existence meaningful rather than merely factual. Your consciousness reading these words, forming thoughts about the nature of time, feeling perhaps a sense of a vertigo at the vastness of the questions we're exploring, that's the universe thinking about itself through you. You're not separate from the cosmic story, you're one of its most remarkable chapters, a place where space and time and matter have organized themselves in such a way that they can ask what space and time and matter actually are. This perspective transforms our relationship with the past in profound ways. Instead of seeing your history as something you carry like a burden, you might see it as something you are, part of the four-dimensional sculpture of your existence extending through space-time. Every difficult period you've survived, every moment of growth, every relationship that shaped you, they're not just memories, they're aspects of your extended being, parts of the complex pattern that is you. The mistakes you've made don't disappear when you learn from them. They become part of the texture of your existence, contributing to the wisdom and compassion that you bring to present moments. The love you've experienced doesn't fade when relationships end. It becomes part of your capacity to recognize and appreciate love when you encounter it again. Nothing is wasted, nothing is truly lost, because it all contributes to the ongoing process of becoming who you are. But this raises new questions about responsibility and choice. If your entire life already exists as a four-dimensional structure in space-time, what happens to free will? How can your decisions matter if they're already embedded in the eternal architecture of the block universe? How can you be responsible for choices that are, in some sense, already made? Maybe the answer lies in recognizing that choice doesn't require the ability to change the past or control the future. Choice might be the process by which the structure of space-time becomes what it is. Your decisions don't change a pre-existing timeline. They participate in creating the timeline that eternally exists. You're not separate from the block universe, trying to influence it from the outside. You are part of it, one of the ways it organizes itself into the complex, meaningful pattern that it is. Think of it like writing a story. The characters in a completed novel don't have the ability to change their plot, but their choices are still what make the plot what it is. Their decisions, their growth, their relationships, all of that is what gives the story its structure and meaning. They're not puppets being manipulated by an external author. They are the story. Their choices are the mechanism by which the narrative becomes what it is. Maybe we're similar. Maybe our choices don't change the eternal structure of space-time, but they are that structure. Every decision you make, every moment of growth, every act of love or courage or creativity contributes to the four-dimensional pattern that is reality. You're not just living through time, you're one of the ways time lives through itself. This view suggests that meaning doesn't require the ability to change the past or control the future. Meaning emerges from the richness and complexity of the patterns we create, the relationships we form, the ways we respond to the circumstances we find ourselves in. Whether those patterns are eternal fixtures in a block universe or temporary structures in a flowing river of time, they remain meaningful because of their intrinsic beauty, their capacity to generate experience, their ability to create moments of connection and understanding and wonder. And wonder, perhaps, is the key. The fact that we can contemplate these questions, that we can imagine block universes and flowing time and emergent realities, that we can feel both humbled and exhilarated by the mystery of our own existence. That capacity for wonder might be more important than any particular answer we arrive at. Because wonder is what transforms information into experience, what turns the mechanical grinding of physical processes into the felt reality of consciousness. Wonder is what makes the difference between a universe that merely exists and a universe that knows it exists. Whether time is real or illusory, whether the past persists or fades, whether the future is fixed or open, the capacity to wonder about these things remains one of the most remarkable features of reality as we know it. We are the universe's way of marveling at itself, of asking questions about its own nature, of experiencing the vertigo of not knowing what kind of reality we're embedded in. That's a remarkable thing to be, regardless of whether we're eternal patterns in a static space-time or temporary eddies in a flowing river of becoming. The conversation continues as it must, because the mystery of time touches everything we think we know about existence, consciousness, meaning, and our place in the vast cosmos. Scientists will design new experiments, philosophers will refine their arguments, and each of us will continue to explore these questions through the simple but profound act of living, of experiencing, of being conscious beings embedded in whatever time turns out to be. Maybe the past exists as eternal moments in a block universe, as real as the present, as fixed as the laws of physics. Maybe it exists as fading echoes in a flowing river of time, gradually dissolving back into the quantum foam from which all things emerge. Maybe it exists as crystallized information in the universe's ongoing computation of itself, as data that continues to influence the present, even as it transforms into something new. Or maybe all of these perspectives capture something true about the nature of temporal existence, different facets of a reality too complex and strange for any single framework to encompass completely. Maybe the question of whether the past still exists somewhere in time is like asking what color Wednesday is or what the square root of love equals. Maybe it's a category error, applying concepts that make sense in our everyday experience to a realm where those concepts break down and reveal their limitations. But that doesn't make the question meaningless. It makes it generative, creative, transformative. Questions that push us to the limits of our understanding often tell us more about the nature of reality than questions we can answer definitively. They reveal the assumptions we didn't know we were making, the boundaries we didn't know we had constructed, the possibilities we hadn't yet imagined. The mystery of time's nature keeps us humble in the face of existence, aware of how much we don't know, grateful for the extraordinary fact that we exist at all in a universe complex enough to generate beings capable of asking these questions. Whether we're eternal or temporary, whether we're made of matter or information, whether we're embedded in flowing time or extended through static space-time, we remain conscious, wondering, capable of love and growth and the kind of reflection that makes existence not just factual but meaningful. And meaning, perhaps, is what we're really asking about when we wonder whether the past still exists somewhere in time. We want to know if our experiences matter, if they leave lasting marks on the fabric of reality, if the love we've given and received, the growth we've achieved, the beauty we've created and appreciated, if any of that persists beyond our immediate awareness of it. The answer, from every perspective we've explored, seems to be yes. Whether as eternal moments in a block universe, or as information patterns that continue to influence the present, or as part of the universe's growing store of experience and wisdom, our lives matter in ways that extend far beyond our immediate perception. We are woven into the fabric of existence itself, not as separate observers, but as integral parts of whatever reality turns out to be. So as you move forward through whatever time is, carrying your past with you in whatever way it persists, leaning into a future that may already exist or may be genuinely open, remember that you are not just experiencing the mystery of existence, you are part of it, one of its most remarkable expressions, a place where the universe becomes conscious of itself and marvels at its own infinite complexity and beauty. And as we reach the end of this gentle exploration, perhaps what matters most isn't whether we've found a definitive answer, but that we've spent time with a question that transforms how we see everything around us. Because that's what the deepest questions do. They don't just give us information, they change the quality of our attention, the texture of our awareness, the way we inhabit each passing moment. Tonight, whether it's late where you are or early, whether you're drifting towards sleep or just beginning to wake up, you're participating in something extraordinary. You're experiencing time from the inside, feeling what it's like to be a conscious being, embedded in whatever temporal reality turns out to be. That experience, that capacity for awareness and wonder remains profound, regardless of which theory proves correct. Your memories, the weight of your history, the anticipation you feel when imagining tomorrow, all of these are real features of your existence, whether they're eternal aspects of a four-dimensional block, or flowing patterns in a river of becoming, or crystallized information in a cosmic computation. They shape who you are and how you move through the world. They are part of the ongoing process by which the universe knows itself through beings like you. So perhaps the question of whether the past still exists somewhere in time isn't one we need to answer definitively. Perhaps it's one we need to live with, to carry forward as we move through whatever time turns out to be. The mystery keeps us humble, keeps us wondering, keeps us grateful for this extraordinary fact that we exist at all in a universe complex enough to ask such questions. Sleep well, time traveler, and remember that whatever reality is, you're beautifully woven into its very fabric.